All right, guys, welcome to the first Zoom of December, and pretty much going to be straight up following up from our call on Friday, where we had pretty much, I forgot who had acknowledged it, but I know I had discussed that there's a potential where we could see maybe a false flag, and that could change the entire narrative from a swing perspective, especially if we take out our previous major low. Excuse me. And we had, I think somebody had acknowledged to me last week on Friday that we had potentially hit a valid wick, which is very, very valid. Honestly, I didn't see it at first, but it's becoming very interesting because as we start to zoom in, right, inside of that POI, obviously we got the conversion, right, the minor intraday conversion that we had talked about, and that has pretty much given us, right, the recovery into the downside or a more of a bearish move, right? And we know that the H4 wick here is still technically in play, but I don't really want to consider this a POI. It was a news event, and if we zoom in, it's really just one big wick. It's not really something I'd like to play. So now it's becoming very, very crucial to see how we are going to react, right, from where our character changed, right? And our character changed basically right after this high. So I'm going to ignore the wick for now. Right, and see what can happen from a minor intraday perspective, right? Because that is pretty much what I had seen today during our session. But unfortunately, we just didn't get that many, that much of a move today, right? Especially from 7 a.m. As you can see, we've really only moved about 7 points here. Not even, probably like 4 points, or not even that in this scenario. But as you can see, the momentum is definitely slowed down, right? From an internal perspective. Right, we've already taken that preliminary structure that solidifies our minor intraday range, but we are still medium term bearish. So when I'm trying to judge a bias based on where we are currently, I'm always trying to see how our mitigations are affecting or the narrative that is in play at the moment. So there's a POI here, as you can see, right, for the continuation bias of high low retracement continuation, right? But I don't believe we topped that. No, I think we barely missed it. So not even the cleanest mitigation, but if you were to consider that a top, there is an internal, right, obvious bearish liquidity grab. And as we zoom in, right, obviously the potential mitigation is still in play. So there's still a possibility that we can still see, right, that bearish momentum, right, over this next week. So it's going to be very, very crucial to see how we begin to react, because we can even start seeing potentially price start to range up, right, which is kind of what I would prefer to see, just because I want to see effort in one direction be failed so that I can, you know, obviously capitalize on the opposite direction. So as of now, I'm definitely going to incline more towards a medium-term bearish, especially just because of the heavy momentum that we saw yesterday and today. So we could easily start seeing a potential reversal in price, and it will be very, very important to see how we will begin transitions if we are to be a little bit more bullish and not range up, and see if we can get a bearish transition. If we can get a strong bearish transition on the minor intraday, then we can definitely catch a major move to the downside. But at the same time, if we are actually to continue lower, right, and then come into the upside, then I'm more so inclining to a continuation bullish bias. So I'm really trying to see how we're going to react today and tomorrow, just to see if any transition is in place, so that we can obviously capitalize on the following moves. So that brings us to AU. right, where, right, only makes sense for this bullish move to come into play, just because we have already taken out a major liquidity point. Taking out a major liquidity point here, and we're now gaining speed in the opposite direction via the minor intraday structure breaks. But nothing too clean today as well. Like as you can see, based on a narrative perspective, we've already seen the preliminary structure break, and we've already seen, right, a potential structural unwillingness to the upside. So for the meantime, the bullish sentiment is in play, which makes a lot of sense after, you know, we've been covering this for the past couple of months. After we reach these higher time frame targets, daily, weekly, we start to see a recovery in the opposite direction. But as we start to zoom in today, like I said, this is very crucial that we have the structural disruption, the failed mitigation to the downside, which resulted in upside movement. And as of now, right, we're currently still in this bullish order flow, right? I don't believe we breached our POI, no. But from a medium term perspective, we are still bearish. We just need, right, obviously that minor intraday transition, and we need to get, you know, any type of obviously POI, because as of now, definitely acknowledge this POI. We can also definitely acknowledge that we have a lot of speed into the upside, leaving behind inefficient pricing. So who knows, we can probably see any type of strong reaction off of here, and if we do, then that's when we begin to capitalize, right? Because this would, if this were to happen today, this would more than likely be like an Asia move. But yeah, with that being said, AU, I still want to incline to that bearish bias, just because it's been more bearish than we've seen with EU or with how bullish DXY has been. But we are a bit concerned with the fact that we took out relative equal lows on a very high time frame, and that we have seen a very strong reaction into the upside. So it's going to be very important to see how we react from this POI today. So you guys definitely be aware of that. And I mean, this would also be considered, excuse me, this would also be considered potential maybe structural continuation. But yeah, with that being said, I mean, EU, we had projected, right, obviously potential short-term recovery into then a continuation, but unfortunately that's not what we're getting, and that's not what we got. So as of now, it's becoming very important in today's point of reference, because there are two significant POIs. I believe this was the news event from last week, so who knows if we were going to even give an actual reaction from that. But as of now, just based on where we are in price at the moment from my minor intraday perspective, this is pretty much what I'm referring to as a false flag, where you see push up and then you see the break of structure recovery into the downside. That's kind of what I was referring to earlier today with what can potentially happen here, right? But as of today, we do see that strong bearish reaction, and this is a confirmed transition here. We've already seen, right, from a liquidity perspective, we've already seen previous low, we come into the upside, take out preliminary high, and take out preliminary low, and then continue to the downside. That's, for me, in my opinion, that is a full transition based on obviously where the area we had been referencing, which is, I believe, in H4. I believe that was H8, I'm sorry. Yeah, more of an H8 inefficiency fill, but we never reached a wick of reference. So as of now, it's going to be very important to see how we will react here, right, from the continuation perspective of minor intraday, from low into high, right, because obviously the preliminary structure break, the bearish liquidity gap transition is technically solidifying the previous high. So from a premium discount perspective, right, we are at a discount. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how we react from this area of interest, right? You could even argue that there's inefficient pricing there, but internally, right, we would need, obviously, for that to be a confirmed reaction, we would need that to take out our preliminary structure here. So very, very interesting. Very, very slow so far. I didn't personally see anything that matches my interest here, but I do believe tomorrow will be very, very interesting. I really do want to see how we react from these POIs so that we can actually make a proper judgment tomorrow. And yeah, pretty much play based on that, because if we take out the POI here, for example, on AU, then I would more so incline to a more bullish bias, and I would start aiming for previous liquidity points, right? Just because I don't like seeing these bearish transitions be essentially failing, because from the effort perspective, that is technically an unwillingness to continue lower, and that is more so price trying to give you or incline you to pursue that bullish bias. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, with our catalyst DXY, going to be very, very interesting to see how we react from these relative areas of interest and see if we can get any models in play. But with that being said, today is relatively short, not much to cover. I do recommend everybody to please watch last Friday's Zoom. That one, I believe we were on for like an hour, which is, I believe, the 28th. But yeah, definitely watch that Zoom, catch up with the lessons, and we'll go from there. So I'll see you guys on Friday.